Toprak swarming him at one stage. It was interesting through turn 15, where of course Toprak was passed by Alvaro Bautista twice last season. Toprak wasn't really dropped by Bautista through there, so looking really good at the moment, Toprak.
Yeah, looking really strong, and that's going to give him a lot of encouragement. This is down in towards turn 1 when he comes through on Bautista. Bautista just bails on the lap straight away from it, but for Toprak, again, it's that intimidation factor. Every time he's out there on course, he's trying to make sure everyone knows that he's right at that point, and he's got the speed, he's got the consistency, he's got the confidence, and he just wants to keep putting a nail in your coffin.
There's also an element of you don't really want Toprak following you around, watching your every move, learning your strengths and so on. They don't tend to like being followed around. And Alvaro Bautista just bailing out of the way. Toprak comes through and goes on for another lap with 4 minutes remaining in this free practice 2. Andrea Iannone just setting a new personal best lap there, 1 minute 49.615. A lot of rumours about potential extra bikes on the grid or finding some way to keep Iannone in WorldSBK next season, because as reported by GP1 midway through this year, there's a real chance that Iannone ends up being the one still standing when the music stops and is forced back into an early retirement.
Yeah, and ultimately for Iannone, he said that he doesn't want to pay for a ride next year. He's had to bring money to the table for Go 11, and it hasn't worked for him. You know, he won a race here last year, he's had some podiums, he's back racing, but it's not what he wants, and ultimately for him, there's no factory seats available. You know, we haven't had confirmation of what's happening at Honda, but Iannone is not going to be on one of those bikes, and then you look to see what the other options are, and it's independent bikes, it's, you know, more of the same for him really, and I think that's where it becomes difficult to see how he stays on the grid, unless you have it where someone like Pata decide that they really want to have Iannone, the Italian rider, and his big profile on one of their bikes.
And as far as he's concerned, obviously he had to make the gamble to start with an independent team in WorldSBK. He wasn't going to come back after 4 years out and immediately get a factory ride in the championship, much as he would have liked to. First season, he was knocking on the door trying to get a factory ride for this season, didn't get one. And now he doesn't look like being in a position to justify one, actually. So quite unfortunate if Iannone's career does now just peter out, and this is the last we see of him. Yeah. Particularly when you think back to what he did here last year, what he did in Phillip Island at the start of this season.
Ultimately, it comes down to, if you were a team manager, would you want him on your bike? And I think it's fair to say that if we went to Phillip Island 12 times a year, you'd want him on the bike, but you'd want Scott Redding on the bike as well, and there's a reason why Scott has gone back to BSB as well, and it's a big challenge to be able to find the right riders now, because WorldSBK is really competitive, and it gets more and more difficult to be able to get the performances out of everyone week in, week out.
That's Alex Lowes, who unfortunately has had a crash with just around 2 minutes remaining in this free practice 2 session. At least for Alex Lowes, A, he's walking away, and B, he's not going to lose very much time in the session. But disappointing to end up on your backside in the final minutes of any session. Alex Lowes, as I say, thankfully walking away from that spot.
Yeah, Lowes had set his personal best in Sector 1, only 100th of a second slower than Razgatlioglu's fastest time, and then this is the crash for him, and yeah, that's a bit of work to be done for Bimota tomorrow, and you can see that the bike just clearing that part there, but for Lowes, that's a crash that you can't see into that corner. We saw when we rode on board with Toprak how much it descends in there. Usually if you're a little bit late on the brakes, you can tuck the front and then have an instant like that.
Nicolo Bulega with a new fastest lap of this free practice 2 session, a 1 minute 48.736, and Toprak coming back at him in the first sector of his latest lap. We might get a little bit of a duel in the final minute here of FP2.
Yeah, and for Toprak, usually you tend to see that he'll go out at the end of a session. Sometimes he doesn't use that new tyre at the end, or the soft tyre at the end of sessions. He likes to go out and just try and prove a point, but you'd imagine with 15-16 laps on that tyre from the first stint that he's out there with a new tyre at the end.
Sam Lowe's third fastest at the moment. A little bit of ground to be found by the looks of it in Sector 1 for Nicolo Bulega, because everyone's up on him seemingly on their latest laps. Looking down the timesheet, Razgatlioglu, Sam Lowe's, Andrea Locatelli, Gardner, Bassani, Eggerter, all up on Nicolo Bulega's Sector 1 time, and Bulega's down on it again by 1.5 tenths on this latest lap. So elsewhere in the lap, Bulega obviously strong enough to take P1, but through that first sector, a little bit of a weakness maybe there for him.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sam up by 1/10 of a second in Sector 1 and gives up a bit of time in Sector 2. Sector 3 is where he needs to find his time. Bulega just everyone's able to give themselves a chance to challenge him in Sector 1, but we'll see what it's going to be like at the end of the session. It doesn't look like Top Rack's going to be able to improve. Checkered flags come out, so this will be the end of Top Rack session.
Top Rack 10th of a second down after 3 completed sectors, and crosses the line having lost another couple in the final sector, so it will be 1 apiece on Friday here in Motorland Aragon. Top Rack Razgatlioglu fastest in FP1, Bulega fastest in FP2. Bulega's time though, 1 minute 48.7, and Top Rack's time earlier on today was a 1 minute 48.3. So it's certainly Razgatlioglu still with the upper hand.
Yeah, and certainly for Top Rack, he's done that long run this afternoon as well, and still able to set the second fastest time in this session, despite being 4/10 of a second slower than he went in this morning's run. So just shows how much speed he has right now in both single lap pace and race pace.
Third fastest for Sam Lowe's. Riders just making their way through to complete their final laps. Opportunity to improve for Xavi Vieque and also Andrea Locatelli here. Vieque moves himself up, and Locatelli goes 4th fastest, so ahead of Bautista and Van der Mark, ahead of Petrucci. Xavi Vieque crosses the line, that's good enough for 8th for him. Jonathan Ray also set a new personal best on his last lap to go P11. Axel Bassani is the only rider out there still circulating who may improve. 4/10 down after 3 completed sectors, up to him to get a good final sector. P13 at the moment for Axel Bassani. Obviously for promoter Alex Lowe's has crashed out of the session. Alex Lowe's a couple of tenths of a second faster than Bassani on the pair's fastest laps. Bassani already doing a good job because he was down in 15th earlier on and 2 seconds off Top Rack's pace. He finishes the session ahead of Alex Lowe's and only 6/10 from Top Rack's pace. So decent final lap from Axel Bassani to finish 10th fastest in FP2 and 10th fastest on the combined times as well.
Yeah, and for Bassani only half a second down, and it shows how close it is right now as well, because Jari Montella 16th fastest, a second off the pace, and when you look from the likes of Bassani, Ray, Lowe's, Gardner, even Iannone as well, if they just find a couple of tenths of a second, they move up inside the top 5, and it just shows how tight it is in that margin. And that means that tomorrow morning's Super Bowl session really is what's going to define so much the weekend, and that session is so exciting week in, week out, just because you know that if you make a mistake, your whole weekend is compromised. It's where all the pressure builds up.
Let's go through a 3-2-1 then. Sam Lowe's 3rd fastest, 2.5 tenths of a second down. Top Rack Razgatlioglu 2nd fastest in FP2, and Bulega was the fastest this afternoon, but only by 12 thousandths of a second over Top Rack Razgatlioglu, and only good enough for 2nd fastest on the combined time.